This comes back to unfolding the challenge and minimizing the extraneous ambiguity.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it all is. I mean, or that's, if you don't have that, you don't have squat. That you can have all the accoutrements, and that's where they are now.
But but you can get at that by just caring about how children learn. You don't have to be some scientist about all this stuff. I mean, you can either get that from first-person attention to your own learning,
right,
or you can get that by observing any child. But you can't. But I think one of the big problems is that teachers have learned not to do either.
Well, it's hard for them to do. It's just, I mean, we just have to face the fact that it's hard for them to create corrections to things. They know their kids are having trouble, and they can tell you what they're having trouble with. They're not, schooled in how you would use inferences to figure out how you fix it up. Like if they knew some rules, if they had been taught that, they'd be able to do it. But if they'd been taught it, they'd throw out 98% of the programs they've got. They'd say, whoa, this really stinks. Let's revise it.
Doesn't this come back, though, to rather than thinking that the objective is this corpus of, specifications, they got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, that there's this overarching concern, this kind of trumping all the rest of it, that's contextualizing all the rest of it, that the most important thing that we're trying to do is to bring forth a coherent quality of participation from the inside out in this child, so that we can hook into that and we can engage that and unfold these challenges and so forth in the way that we're talking about. And that's the center line that we're staying on while we bring in all the rest of these objectives. And if we don't have that, we're lost.
Absolutely. But from the standpoint of someone doing it or designing it, it is scientific and it is abstract to the point that you're following rules. You're starting with this premise: I ought to do whatever I can to make the learning of that child successful, eminently efficient, and reinforcing to him, period.
Which means, in order to do that, if I double click on that and go deeper, it's the quality of their participation.
Right.
I've got to make contact with their participation.
Right, but see, that's where, that's where it all falls down. Because they think making contact means establishing rapport.
We're talking about synchronous contact on the edge of these challenges.
Absolutely. That you need to know where they are, so you need to know, or so you can present stuff that is not precipitous for them, but that stretches them a little bit. And that they'll be able to succeed, so they succeed at a high enough rate. Like if they succeed on 75% of what they do, even, like on new learning material, we say they got to be 70% first time correct. They know they are far more likely to get it the first time than they're not.
Right, and this connects back to the emotional piece. When I brought up the emotional piece, we went into somewhat of a tangential response, which was how that gets distorted. A concern for emotionality gets distorted into trying to make everything feel good.
Right.
But it's not the positive side of that concerns me, and what we're talking about
here. It's the
negative side. Yeah. It's what happens if we're not meeting them in a way that's instructionally necessary for who they are, and they learn to develop a negative emotional affective response. That undermines everything. I mean, the core of our thing, and I want you to comment on this, is this. It's this simple. And I think this is where you and I really meet. We've created a situation in which our children are experiencing a uniquely unnatural kind of confusion. It's a kind of confusion that this organism didn't grow up doing, didn't evolve to deal with.
Right.
It's a cultural, social, technological kind of confusion that's not natural to the organism, on the one hand. On the other hand, because of how we contextualize that and how we instruct, meet, parent, the whole field around children, as they're experiencing this confusion, they're learning to feel as if this confusion is a reflection of something wrong with them.
Absolutely.
And as they start to feel shame in relation to confusion, then they want to start avoiding being confused,
Right.
feeling confused,
Right.
pre-consciously, faster than
Right.
conscious. So when children want to avoid feeling confused, it's decapitating learning.
Right. Yeah, no, they will escape from the situation one way or another.
Well, this seems to be to me, this seems very centrally misperceived, not understood in the education community.
Well, see, it's misunderstood, I guess, largely because they wouldn't know what to do about it if they saw it. I mean, you know, if they knew that that's what they were doing, they don't know exactly how to undo it because they have so many, or there are such pandemic misconceptions about what kids are and how they learn.
We've gone down the track with the self-esteem movement where people thought that it was possible to pump up somebody's positivity absent their actual experience from the inside of effectiveness. What I hear you saying is look, let's discard that. That doesn't go anywhere. Kids feel good when they know that they're able to meet the challenges that they're actually faced with, right? And that there's no fooling them about that. Right?
Well, kids are very lawful. I mean, they're as lawful as daylights. If you know how they respond to reinforcement and you know how they respond to failure, you can predict what they're going to like, how you can turn them on, and you can have a lot of fun working with them because you don't have to be afraid of them, and you don't have to be uncertain about things. You know what they're going to do as a function of what you do.
That comes back to you've got to pay a different kind of attention to the correspondence between your instruction and what's being learned and how the children are participating. What kind of errors are a consequence of the participation you're calling for and how you're instructing.
Right. And you have to take any of their errors as information about something you did wrong. And, you know, you may explore the possibilities and say, well, I didn't do anything wrong. And then you're stuck with it. But in most cases, you will find out you did something wrong, that it was your fault, not their fault.
If you're learning oriented in your teaching.
Right. But I mean, the problem, you know, in getting that to teachers, it'd be wonderful if we had a system where they really learned about teaching, where they had the opportunities that we did, which is to work with kind of hard to teach kids who didn't know a lot, who were preschool age, and who would make every kind of mistake imaginable. And then you would learn all about mistakes. You'd learn all about correcting them. You'd learn all about the cost of not correcting them in a timely fashion. You'd learn about all of the ways to buttress against mistakes, how you can do it with timing, how you can do it with pattern, how you can do it with pacing, and how you can do it spuriously, and how you can do it without any spurious cues. And then when you get there, now you're in a position to, make some really intelligent decisions about how you're going to configure instruction.
Well, what right here, one of the things that seems to keep teachers, I mean, obviously teachers are like the rest of us, and they make an investment in their identity as a teacher and a particular way of doing things that they, as we start to talk about some of these other things, pushes against that in a way that they don't feel very good about and that they want to recoil from. There's a shame aversion to, what do you mean I'm wrong in how I'm teaching? Right? That's one piece of it.
Right. But I mean, if you can't correct it, what good does it do to tell? You know,
part of the way that loops in, it seems to me, that prints the license for that kind of thinking is, well, I care about the whole child, not just this robotic conformance to, the assessments and measurements of the education system.
Right.
There's a failure to understand the self-esteem negative consequences of the way we're doing things. There was a failure to understand the enormous emotional, sociological, behavioral consequences of the fact that we're disabling the learning in most of our children because of our ignorance and negligence in the way that we instruct.
Yeah. I agree.